it's Joy, and today we're watching The Rings of Power, Season 2, Episode 1, Elven Kings Under the Sky. I am so excited this show is back. Before I watched this, I watched Amazon's official recap, and then I watched a couple of different recaps on YouTube to make sure I was up to date and refreshed with everything, and it made me even more excited than I already was. A quick disclaimer that I do have chronic fatigue syndrome, ME, and one of the things that I find that affects me with reacting is brain fog and remembering characters' names, especially if they're not like Jane, Bob, like more like fantasy type names. I think with this show, like I know the main ones, but even sometimes like I might forget Galadriel's name randomly and just be there like, what, how? So I'm really sorry about that, but I'm really excited for the show either way. Reminder that you can find the unedited version of this reaction on my Patreon, and let's go.
Your new master, Sauron.
He looks a bit different. So is this in the past?
New age,
like not long after the elves defeated Morgoth and everything?
Many orcs will die.
I'm not so sure about that bit, boss.
Out of the chaos.
Such an inconvenience when someone tries to assassinate you.
Your only future.
Yeah. So when he said to Galadriel, I killed Sauron, did he mean it, or does, I don't know if Sauron's gonna escape? I mean, obviously Sauron escapes, but... Phew. So maybe he did mean it when he said, I killed Sauron. And did Eodar just want, like, genuinely just want a nice, peaceful little place his orcs could live? Not conquest and dominion? If you want to be sure, like, cut his head off. So this is the place Galadriel found at the beginning of Season 1? So, did they think that was him, like, dying and, like, his life force leaving? What did he do? Use some sort of dark, mystical ways to... Don't think you're going to want to drink from this pool. Set to claim living beings to gain life. You had a really gross transformation into this. Thought you should know.
Someplace good.
You're speaking to the wrong person here, kindly man. His good deeds lasted for all of never, as expected. So how long, I guess it took him like centuries to reform and everything. It wasn't as quick as it appeared obviously to us. Does he not trust her with them?
Could you? Of all our kind.
He deceived me.
Yes, she didn't
I was
know.
deceived.
No, Galadriel, you were blind.
Do you really think after all she was hunting him, determined to avenge her brother, that was her sole mission in life, she was really going to be like, I'm going to pal around with him now?
Blinded by your own.
How you inform me our most cunning enemy is rising again? If
I
we
mean,
leave now, the people...
I would like to point out to you, sir, that she did inform you of this before any of this happened, before she'd even met the man. And you told her, it's all not true, go have a happy retirement. She's the only one that's been telling you this.
Middle Earth...
You gonna jump?
No!
I completely understand his reluctance. I would probably agree with him and feel the same thing. But I think the king needs to stop and consider everything. But Elrond also shouldn't be making the decisions solely by himself. He should look at all the facts. I mean, I would say he looks like he's in a sticky situation. But he does also seem to be quite content.
Right, you there. You swear allegiance
I
to
mean,
our...
yeah, sure. Maybe actually, you know, death might be better than living in this world right now, so... Okay. Does he recognize something about him?
My people defeated the men of these lands.
I
We
mean,
defeated the elves who came to their aid.
your
We
people
even
lost the
defeated their
fight. You
allies,
then just started a
men
volcano.
from beyond the sea.
The volcano beat everybody. You lost.
The slaves in his army once more. Set my people free, and I will tell you where he can be found. So
Hello. Possible Gandalf. Is he dreaming?
Oh no. Oh no.
Oh, come on. Might bear some fruit. Least you could do is try.
Have you forgotten what happened when last I tried such a thing?
He's afraid. He does not have a very good control over this, does he?
But perhaps wizards are not always fair.
He's got a plan or 10. That's what's concerning. It's so funny considering Baldric was like, I'm so excited to serve Sauron.
Jesus me.
He might decide that's just a little appetizer. He's planning his plan. The situation with the rings is so interesting because obviously it's something that Sauron wanted. He was the one that like helped them get there and suggested, let's make it in with different metals and why don't we make little rings or whatever. I don't remember if he specifically suggested rings, but he definitely suggested this whole process and helped them get there. And it's something that he wanted to do, so I completely get Elrond's skepticism of it all and concern that he's tainted the process somehow. But at the same time, you're going to die either way. Though I suppose Elrond thought of, well, if we all just leave, Sauron won't be able to amass his armies, but that's also probably not true.
Trust no stranger upon your path.
I feel like you should send like 10 messengers to all take slightly different routes if you're that concerned.
Because your actions have left us no alternative. Because of you, our enemy lives. Because of you, we've no choice but to test the virtue of the rings. I should have you thrown in fetters and cast to the Etten Moors for what you've done.
She was the only one who warned you he was there, and I suppose unless they think she knew he was Sauron the whole time and just didn't bother telling anyone, by the time she figured out who he was, he'd escaped. And as far as she was aware, he was gone when they made the rings. So why are they putting the blame at her door? And it's simply because she's been saying, hey, Sauron's out there. Hey, you know how Sauron's out there? You know Sauron's out there and he's going to keep causing problems. And you were like, oh, silly woman, go away. Now it's all her fault. I guess she probably should have told them before they made the rings, but...
The rings may well be a ploy on his part. A device in some larger plan, the end of which we cannot yet see.
You're not totally wrong.
What would you ask of me?
But none of these are the...
The rings must be...
Elrond. I have come to
the
coax you.
old elf gone with the
If I
rings.
fail, the High King will.
And you turned your back on it. Was it truly to fight the darkness? Or
Yes!
was the darkness calling to you? Can you not see? All this may be by his design.
I did what I felt was right.
I can understand why he thinks this, and it is a
Time
valid
will
concern to
reveal
have.
that was fully.
This is so fascinating, because obviously we trust Galadriel, I trust Galadriel. I do think that there's a chance her prolonged being with Sauron will affect her, but it doesn't seem to have done thus far. And I believe in her. But I completely understand why Elrond doesn't and why he doesn't want to take that chance.
Poppy?
Well,
Only right now.
she's not the Golden Mask. That's still out there.
Trees of stone. Light in the tower no longer my home.
Is Poppy going to stay with us, or is she going to go back now that she's saved him from this? Oof. They don't want to be destroyed.
Your people have been set free. Now tell me what you know of Sauron.
I'd be like, proof please that my people have been set free. But he's Sauron, he's manipulating, so...
Sauron is so you can marshal your legions to destroy him.
This is so fascinating because he turned himself in. It's not like he got accidentally captured in the middle of his plans. This is all part of his plan, but he knows he doesn't have the trust of the elves, so what is his plan? You know when someone's in chains and essentially has a sword at their throat, any vow they make is meaningless, right? But this is Sauron.
I vow to serve the Lord of Mordor.
But he's like, I shall be the Lord of Mordor.
No, I'm going to kill you.
Yes,
Is that right?
yes it is, I'm afraid. I mean, I'm not afraid. You're a pretty terrible person. What was his plan there? What did he achieve? Other than setting Adar on, like, red alert for Sauron.
Our days in Middle-earth are ended.
Got a bit more time, actually. Actually, I've got some rings. Destiny. I don't know whether or not Sauron has done anything to them, or whether it's more just the sheer scale of what they are and what they represent. And it's done. Now, is there going to be some secret hidden cost? It worked. So the danger now is obviously if Sauron gets back here before the note arrives that says he's Sauron, or at the very least kills the messenger or something, he could get his... At some point the One Ring has to be created.
Assassins. He says he wants to negotiate.
As I feared. This is why Galadriel should have told them sooner. If not the second the rings were made, if not before. Oh, okay, I loved being re-immersed back into this world. I am a sucker for any fantasy world, and this one, it's fantastic, it's brilliant. And I like it. I mean, I enjoyed the original Lord of the Rings films. I'm not like their biggest fan, but like when I was younger, I just couldn't get into them. When I watched them before watching this show, I actually did appreciate them a lot and did enjoy them. But I think what I enjoy the most about this show is the breadth of it, how we get to see more areas than the nature of the original films and even the Hobbit films, is that we are just following our one group, and even if that group splits up a little bit, kind of they're just on their journey, and it's not so much kind of a wide sweeping as it is like mission oriented, which is, it works for the films, it's what the films are about. And I enjoyed every stop along the way during those films. But I think in this one, it's just something about the breadth of it, the different range of characters in the world that just is what I like. And I'm really, really enjoying it. The question of whether or not using the rings is a right idea is a fascinating one. I mean, I was the whole way through team use the rings, but how much of that is because I know they use the rings? Because I'm pretty sure Galadriel still has her ring in the Lord of the Rings films. As I mentioned, I've seen them one time. I'm not a fountain of knowledge and an expert, and please don't spoil things. You know, if it's like, oh, actually, this has got to happen because of this, then don't spoil that to me. I will find out when it happens in the show. But there are certain things like that, and like when did Elrond die when he jumped? No, he didn't, because he's alive later. So there's little things like that where you're able to piece together that like Galadriel's got to survive somehow, but I don't mind that. It's kind of nice to have a couple of characters that go like they may suffer, but they'll live through the suffering. So how much of my sort of impulse of wanting them to use the rings was because I know they do, and how much of it was because I think it was the right thing to do. Now, I completely understand why Galadriel believed they should use the rings, and did indeed put one on. Because she figured out he was Sauron at the last minute, and Sauron was gone when they did the thing, when they made the rings. I do understand Elrond being concerned that Sauron had done something to them, to the Forge, done something somewhere that would cause a problem with the rings. But do also feel like at this point, what other choice that they have? Sauron will amass an army, and even if it's a matter of time, he's not going to just be like, oh well, I'll go be a blacksmith someplace. He will be slowly but surely amassing his forces and getting his revenge. It had occurred to me, or maybe wonder whether or not at some point he did consider just living an ordinary human life. I mean, I assume he's still immortal or whatever, but just living an ordinary life somewhere and giving it all up. But the fact that he went with those people on the boat, and then the first chance he got, he took the guy's pouch with its symbol and everything. Like, there was zero kindness in that man. So I enjoyed seeing that. Now, obviously, he's a sorcerer. He's got like mystical powers. I'm not an expert on this, but how he like reformed was really gross. So Sauron's quite gross when you think about it. I'm being silly. So I completely understood Elrond, but he also doesn't have the right to make that decision all by himself. I don't think anybody does. Now, this has definitely caused a fissure between Elrond and Galadriel, because he does not believe she should put it on. Even though it fixed the tree and it seems to have fixed everything, he still doesn't think it was the right thing to do. But I think she also has a right to be a bit upset with him because he doesn't trust her. Now, his question of whether or not the reason she turned away was because the darkness has been calling to her all this time. There could definitely be an element of that. I think every single person, and elf, when I say person, I mean all species, is susceptible to the darkness. But if she was susceptible to the darkness, when Sauron was like, want to be my queen and you can keep me good and then we can rule together and everything will be wonderful, she would have been like, yes, oh my god, yes please, I really fancy you, and then now we can be together and I will make sure everything is good and wonderful and keep you from me. Like, she could have like bought into his like bullshit, but she didn't. Should she have told them before the rings were forged? Yes, probably. But then the rings might not have been forged. I think she should have told them once the rings were done, so that Celebrimbor would know. I mean, I know she said we should not treat with him anymore, which I guess is why he was like, oh, I don't know, we should let that guy in. But she should have, once the rings were done, been like, and the reason we shouldn't treat with him anymore is because he's Sauron. So it was very interesting dynamics here. And while I have to assume the rings are going to be a good thing and do the right thing because the elves survive for a decent chunk of time, and at some point Sauron's going to become an eye in the sky, that doesn't mean there aren't any risks. And I think you can definitely see the way the old elf was willing to throw them away. He trusted what Elrond had said, he agreed with him and he believed him. And then the rings were like, no, don't throw us in the ocean. And the way they appealed to him, there is something off and something a bit wrong about the nature of all of this. Something not quite natural about it, which doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, but it's definitely a thing to be concerned. And even the way, I mean, the way Galadriel, the way the old elf were looking at these rings, it could be as simple as, wow, I can feel their power, the fact that like I put this thing on and now the tree is forming, like everything is inspiring. But it could also be something more sinister within the rings themselves that could alter their wearers, and I don't know. But I think Elrond was right to be suspicious, but at the same time, just because Sauron didn't use the rings this one time wouldn't mean that he couldn't possibly do it again, or find some other way of gaining the sort of power he wants, especially now that he knows it is definitely possible. Then we have old Sauron himself. I liked following his journey, his very disgusting journey, which I guess took a few centuries. Unless the elves had just been hanging out for a while. It was interesting to see like how he was a bad ruler of the orcs. And maybe when Adar said, I don't want to conquer anything, I just want to grab some land, which is conquering, but have a place for my people to live. Maybe he meant it, but he still is enslaving humans and destroying homes, and yeah. And they still, were orcs who did war crimes and did a lot of bad things, so it's like maybe we shouldn't be just giving you a home. But it was interesting kind of seeing how Sauron was like, you are my slaves and you will do what I say and we will conquer and I will be your ruler. And Adar was like, no, you're free now, I'm your father. And the orcs do what he says far more willingly. It's a very interesting dynamic to see that maybe he was genuine when he was claiming they just wanted a place to live, even though they're still massacring every human they come across or enslaving them. It's interesting sort of to see the differences between them and the fact that they did turn on Sauron because he was like, now I shall be your master. They were like, actually, we're good, thanks. Now, what Sauron's plan is, I couldn't tell you because he turned himself in. He got the people of the Southlands freed. I guess the humans that were remaining were not Southland people. I mean, whether or not that actually happened, whether they freed them or not. And he told him enough to make sure Adar was on the lookout for Sauron and concerned. But he didn't need to do that because it probably would be easier for him to overtake the orcs or do whatever without Adar doing anything, Adar knowing about it. And now he's going back to Celebrimbor to be like the emissary from the Southlands. What is he up to? I'm assuming what he's up to is trying to once again use the Forge to make another ring to rule other rings, to rule them all. But I don't know quite what is going on with him, why he needs to pop in to see the orcs, like what he's doing with what's in his evil brain, and it scares me. Nori and the stranger, as they call him, who I'm still thinking is Gandalf, I don't know, he could be someone else. It's fascinating the way he's getting these visions and these glimpses of what they're either the future or memories. And he's terrified of them. He doesn't want it. And so now that they're here, he's terrified. Nori is determined to go on her mission, and I love that Poppy was able to find them and help them, and that the Harfoots had this travelling song that actually had greater meaning once upon a time. The original meaning was lost, but they've rediscovered it, and it was able to help them in their quest. I really don't know where this storyline's going to go, and I don't know who is tracking them down. I assume it's evil people in league with like the witches we saw last season. I know the marking the guy had, it was on his back, but was that like a Sauron mark? But then why would there be random gold masked people? Like, I don't know who these people are and what they're up to, but I'm concerned. We will see. This was a really promising first episode. I'm excited to delve into the rest of the season. A reminder that you can find the unedited version of this reaction on my Patreon 1 week in advance. Nope, not 1 week in advance, because this show is coming out. God, I'm so used to shows that aren't currently airing. So these episodes will be up as soon as possible on Patreon, unedited, and then edited on YouTube after they are released. And thank you so much for watching.